At the beginning of the anime, Joey Wheeler was a total beginner and barely even understood the basics of Duel Monsters. But after some intense training, support from his friends, and a ton of luck, Joey Wheeler became one of the strongest duelists in the world, third only to Yugi and Kaiba according to Pegasus himself. So today, we're going to look at Joey's 10 most iconic cards, how they turned him into the duelist that he is today, and whether or not they're as lucky in the TCG as they are in the anime. Slicing number 10 is Kunai with Chain, one of the strongest weapons in Joey's arsenal of equip cards. And that's because Kunai with Chain has two effects, and when you activate the card, you can either activate just one or both at the same time. Its first effect can only be activated whenever a monster declares an attack, and allows you to change that monster to defense position, immobilize it, and stopping its attack. Meanwhile, its second effect lets you target a monster you control and equip Kunai to it, which gives that monster 500 attack points. This made Kunai with Chain a really strong tool in the anime, and one that proved necessary in several duels as a way to stop an opponent's powerful boss monster from wiping the field, while providing Joey's monsters with the attack necessary to strike back. But as well as being an amazing weapon, Kunai with Chain also represented Joey's desire to protect his friends, as he'd often use it to stop an opponent from attacking an ally in tag duels. This was vital in Joey and Yugi's duel against the Paradox brothers, because when their Wall Shadow moved to attack Yugi's Celtic Guardian, Joey managed to save the day by immobilizing the formerly invincible Wall Shadow by using Kunai with Chain, and kept it outside the wall long enough for the Celtic Guardian to take down one of the labyrinth's strongest creatures. Now, unfortunately, for as iconic as Kunai with Chain was in the anime, it's never seen any real competitive play in the TCG. Its first effect can be a useful way to stop an opponent's attack, but there's tons of other, better ways to protect your monsters and your life points, even amongst some of the earliest cards in the game. And while its attack buff is a neat battle trick that can surprise an unsuspecting opponent, neither of Kunai's effects were ever that impactful in the physical card game. But with the Chain series of cards, it's seen some success in alternative formats, such as Duel Links where both Blast with Chain and Red Eye's Fang with Chain managed to see playing decks focus on the skill Red Eye's Roulette, which lets you add Gearfried the Red Eye's Iron Knight, as well as a random Red Eye spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. And this particular version of Gearfried could gain you a big advantage if you equip cards to it, because you could either use it to reborn a level 7 or lower Red Eyes monster from your graveyard, or you can instead destroy the card that equipped to it in order to pop an opponent's spell or trap card. Overall, while it's definitely unfortunate that such a legendary card has never seen any play in the TCG, it's cool that the With Chain series managed to find a home in Duel Links and decks that use some of Joey's most important cards, letting you use their Nature's Equip cards to your advantage. And blowing into number 9 is Giant Trunade, a card that gave Joey a way of dealing with some of the trickiest spell and trap cards in the series. And that's thanks to its simple but powerful effect, which forces both players to return all spell and trap cards on the field to the hand. Now, in the earlier arcs of the Duel Monster anime, Joey used Trunade in a really simple way, to clear the field of your opponent's spell and trap cards. This was useful in a number of duels, but most prominently featured in the Battle City duels against Mako's Tsunami, where Trunade cleared the field of Mako's Umi and Tornado Wall, revealing the legendary fisherman that had been hiding beneath the water. This allowed for Panther Warrior to declare an attack on the now defenseless monster, winning Joey the duel. But what's cool about this card is that it also helps show just how far Joey has come as a duelist. You see, in his duel against Otom, Joey was able to beat down Otom's Ancient Dragon, a monster that kept reviving itself during the end phase thanks to the Ancient City field spell. Joey had the chance to remove Otom's back row for a turn with the effect of Giant Trunade, so that he could then use Premature Burial to revive Gearfried and deal with his opponent's boss monster. But instead of rushing into a decent play, Joey thought for a moment longer and realized that by activating Premature Burial before Trunade, he could return his own card to his hand so he could use it again. Which is exactly what he did, and summoned both Gearfried the Lightning and Goblin Attack Force, who not only allowed for Joey to deal with Otom's Ancient Dragon, but also allowed for him to win the game outright against his former teacher. And funnily enough, this was exactly what made Giant Trunade so busted in the TCG. You see, Trunade already had stable status for its ability to remove your opponent's back row for a turn, which allowed you to play virtually uninterrupted. But because you also returned your own spell and trap cards, Trunade had a wide array of uses. Because, just like Joey did in the anime, you could use Trunade to return some of your most powerful spell and trap cards back to your hand so that you could use them again. This was useful for allowing you to play under your own floodgates, but could also be paired with cards with powerful on-activation effects like Premature Burial, allowing these effects twice with just a single copy. Now, unfortunately, due to Trunade's amazing versatility, it eventually found its way on the Forbidden Limited list, but it did get a retrain in Hey Trunade, a much weaker version of the card that can't return face-up cards. This makes Hey Trunade a great way to clear back row like its original counterpart, but means that you can't pull off Joey's anime combo to return a face-up spell card you control that has a soft once per turn, or strong activation effects to the hand so that you can use it again. Still, Giant Trunade was an absolute absurd card, and one whose use in the TCG actually lines up really well to how Joey used it in the anime, because while most duelists could easily recognize Trunade's ability to clear back row, a great understanding of the game was needed to show how Trunade could be used to gain even more advantage. And Joey managed to prove that he had the understanding by the time of the Grand Championship, showing just how far he'd come since his first dueling. And rolling to number 8 is the lucky pair of Graceful Dice and Skull Dice, two cards that Joey often used together in order to take down some of the most powerful monsters in the anime. But both of these cards required a little bit of luck and a lot of confidence in order to be useful, because each dice card is based on a chance and requires you to roll a dice, with the number rolling affecting how impactful these cards can be. If you roll Graceful Dice, you get to increase the attack and defense of all monsters you control by 100 times the number you rolled until the end of the turn. While with Skull Dice, your opponent's monsters will lose 100 attack and defense times the number you rolled. Both of these dice are actually a little bit stronger in the anime, where they instead either multiply or divide the attack points of monsters based on the number rolled. But this also came with a new downside that meant that Graceful Dice could only be activated on monsters with 500 or less attack. Which is why in the anime, Joey often paired these two dice with cards with his weaker monsters like Swordsman of Landstar, who on his own only had a measly 500 attack, which meant that every other decent beatstick in the anime absolutely dwarfed it. But when these weak monsters had the backing of these two dice cards, they were almost unstoppable and capable of taking on some of the strongest monsters in the game, like Weevil's perfectly ultimate Great Moth, a monster that was even stronger than Blue Eyes White Dragon, who was taken down by the weak Parasite that Weevil had snuck into Joey's deck. But the most recognizable use of these cards was in Joey's duel against Roba, where the supposedly psychic duelist used his brothers in order to get information on what was in Joey's hand. Roba was confident he was safe to attack because he was told that Joey had 2 copies of Graceful Dice in his hand, and according to the rules, only 1 Graceful Dice could be used per turn. But the second card Joey had wasn't another Graceful Dice, it was a Skull Dice, which divided the Fiend Megacyber's attack points by 5. This not only allowed for Swordsman of Landstar to defeat Roba's monster, it also gave Joey the confirmation he needed that his opponent's psychic powers were all a lie. Unfortunately, these dice weren't so lucky in the TCG and have never really had a deck to call home. But what they represent is still a useful tool in Yu-Gi-Oh! Even in the modern era, the Battle Trick. You see, because of the way the battle step works, it's actually really hard to interact with certain battle phase effects, because once you declare an attack, you have to commit to it unless the conditions for a replay occur, which means that sometimes you can walk face first into your opponent's trap just like Roba did. And this is especially rough once you enter the damage step, where only certain cards can be activated at all, such as stat modifiers, which makes it really hard to deal with your opponent's effects unless you have a way to negate activations. As a result, there's been a ton of cards over the years that have seen play for their ability to change the stats of monsters in the damage step, as it's a great way to take opponents off guard while removing their potential threats. Now in the modern era, battle tricks have seen a lot less success, as you'd much rather have strong going second tools that are capable of dealing with the opponent's board without needing to commit a monster to the field. But there are still a couple of cards in the modern day that can surprise your opponent in the same way both Graceful and Skull Dice did, with the strongest examples being the Forbidden series of cards, a set of quick play spells that have powerful generic effects that also manipulate stats. This makes these cards multi-purpose, because even though most of the time you're probably taking advantage of their negation and protection, you can also use the Forbidden spells as modern battle tricks, altering the stats of your own or your opponent's monsters to turn a battle in your favor. As a whole though, it's a shame that Graceful and Skull Dice never really saw any play. But despite that, similar cards and effects have had a huge impact on the game's history, and are even somewhat still relevant to the modern era due to their ability to take an opponent off guard, like how Joey would surprise his opponents in the anime, making his weak monsters suddenly strong. And scratching in number 7 is the Claw of Hermos, Joey's signature legendary dragon card that chose him to wield the power of Hermos in order to take on the darkness over the Orichalcos. And with the power of this legendary dragon, Joey could combine Hermos with his monsters to create new weapons that his other monsters could wield in order to access their special abilities. Abilities that Joey used to great effect in the anime, such as in his duel against Valen, where he combined Hermos with Rocket Warrior to form Rocket Hermos Cannon, a weapon that was so strong it destroyed all of Valen's armor in one attack. But the most important use of Hermos was during its first appearance in Joey's initial duel against the Orichalcos controlled Mai Valentine. Joey knew that if he won the duel, Mai would lose her soul, but wanted to do everything he could in order to save his friend from the corruption of the Orichalcos, and was even willing to concede the duel and his soul just to try and make Mai see some sense. But after choosing to fight on and try to save his friends, Hermos appeared to him and chose Joey as the third duelist to fight the Orichalcos. From there, Joey was able to use the power of Hermos to stage a comeback, combining the Claw with Time Wizard to form Time Magic Hammer, which flung Mai's Harpy army into the future while being wielded by the Fiend Megacyber. But before Joey could win the duel, Valen, another person who cared for Mai, used his fragment of the Orichalcos in order to break the seal so that no soul was taken. Joey would go on to use Hermos in his second duel against Mai, and finally broke through to her at the cost of his soul, as he was too exhausted to continue, which caused Mai to take hold of the Claw of Hermos to try to take on Darts herself. Essentially, the Claw of Hermos, while an important card in its own right, also represented the bond Joey and Mai shared, and the hope that Joey kept that he'd be able to save someone he cared for. But this card's legendary status isn't really carried over to the TCG, because like the other dragons, Hermos and its functions have never really seen any competitive play, and a big reason for that is just how awkward each of its fusions are to use. Every Hermos fusion monster has a battle phase oriented effect that ranges from an attack buff to even banishing your opponent's monsters, but none of these effects are worth the 3-card investment to make use of them, because while Time Magic Hammer can definitely act as decent removal, it's a lot more awkward to use compared to other strong going second tools like Raigeki, and even other equip cards like Moon Mirror Shield. Still, even though Claw of Hermos and its associated fusions aren't the best cards in the game, the card's importance in the anime is almost unmatched, not just because it helped save the world, but because it helped Joey save Mai. Bleeding at number 6 is Scapegoat, a spell card that could summon out 4 monsters at the same time. The monsters this card summoned are just sheep tokens though, and you can't tribute them for a tribute summon, and you can't summon any of the monsters during the turn that you use the card. And this was never too much of a big deal for Joey though, because of the 2 main ways he would use Scapegoat to his advantage. The first way was as a defensive tool, using the sheep tokens in order to block direct attacks from an opponent's monster, thereby saving his life points. The second way though was by using them as an offensive option, because while he wasn't allowed to tribute a sheep token for a tribute summon, he could still tribute these tokens for card effects or costs. This paired excellently with Panther Warrior, a 2000 attack beatstick that dwarfed most of the low-level monsters, but was held back by requiring another monster to be tributed in order to declare an attack. But if Joey activated Scapegoat, he suddenly had 4 monsters he could act as tribute fodder in order to allow his Panther Warrior to go on the offensive. And in the early days of the game, Scapegoat had the same modular utility, because like Joey, you could use the tokens generated by Scapegoat as either a defensive option to protect your life points, or to apply pressure to your opponent. And if you manage to make it to your turn with a token still in your field, they could be used to your advantage, because you could take control of an opponent's monster by trading your token with the effect of Creature Swap, or you could even tribute the token with the effect of Metamorphosis to special summon out Thousand Eyes Restrict, an amazing boss monster for the time that was capable of dealing with pretty much any monster in the game by equipping it. And this particular strategy was so strong and so infamous that not only did it have an entire deck based around using Scapegoat, this deck also ended up defining one of the most popular historic formats of all time, Goat format, which a ton of different people still play to this day. But that's not even where Scapegoat's time in the meta ends, because after the advent of Link summoning, bringing out 4 bodies to the field could result in a ton of advantage, since you convert these tokens into Link monsters. This meant that Scapegoat reached staple status once again. It could be used during your opponent's end phase to avoid its restriction and allow a free Link 4 off of just a single card, basically winning games all on its own. Overall, it's really neat that Scapegoat managed to see similar play in the TCG as it did in the anime, as a defensive option that you could use offensively if you had the right cards to pair it with, and one that's managed to see play across generations for that reason, potentially giving us a little insight to how Joey might have played in the modern era. Predicting the future at number 5 is Jinzo, one of the rare cards that Joey won through his duels in Battle City, and out of all of the cards he won, Jinzo was easily his greatest ally. Which makes a lot of sense because while Insect Queen, the Legendary Fisherman are all strong cards, they aren't as generically powerful as Jinzo, who not only prevents trap cards and their on-field effects from being activated, but also negates the effects of all trap cards on the field. And in the anime, Jinzo also came with an extra effect that allowed you to destroy all trap cards in the field, whether they were face up or set. Now, to an extent, every monster that Joey won in Battle City is an important card, as each one is a victory that helped to carry him to the Battle City finals. Insect Queen represents his win over Weevil Underwood's cunning tactics, and the Legendary Fisherman represents his newfound respect that Joey and Mako Tsunami gained for one another after their battle. Jinzo is no exception, being the first card that Joey won in his duel against Espa Roba, where he was able to use a lot of luck in order to overcome Roba's cheating as well as his machine menace. But the 2 duelists ultimately ended up respecting one another because they both realized that they were fighting for the sake of their family. And these cards each proved to be an integral part of Joey's victory over Odeon, especially Jinzo, who allowed Joey to stage an impressive counterattack against him where he shut down the fake Merrick's trap cards and destroyed his trap monsters as he was about to lose the duel. But every one of Joey's Battle City victories was necessary for him to win this duel, as each one defended his life points long enough for him to figure out that Odeon wasn't the real Merrick. And the way Joey used Jinzo is exactly how it was used in the TCG, as it's always been an excellent way of dealing with trap cards and trap-based strategies. Because even though the real-life version of Jinzo is technically weaker than its anime counterpart, it's still an absurdly strong card that shuts down 1/3 of the game's card pool. Which is why in the early days of the game, Jinzo saw a ton of success for its ability to shut down game-winning trap cards, like Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, and Sakurata Armor. All of which were common staples in a ton of different strategies, since trap cards featured some of the most easily accessible removal in the game at the time. Removal that Jinzo made worthless. And with its impressive 2400 attack, it sometimes felt almost impossible to deal with. Now, in the modern era, Jinzo sees a lot less play because trap cards are no longer the staples they used to be. and so there's no guarantee that his effect is going to be valuable in every duel. But that doesn't make Jinzo useless, because his effects are still amazing, just a lot more niche. Which explains why Jinzo still sees playing side decks as an auto-win against trap strategies and decks that can access him. With Jinzo most recently being used in Branded, a deck that can special summon out of the graveyard with Albion the Sanctifier Dragon, and Super Heavy Samurai who can search for Jinzo with the effect of Cleafort Genius. So even though Jinzo might not be as common as it used to be, it's still an absolute powerhouse of a card. And it's cool to see that this icon of early Yu-Gi-Oh! Can still be as much of a threat today as it was in the anime, leaving every trap card in its wake completely useless. And infecting the number 4 spot is Parasite. Wait, no. How did that get in here? Stopping the infection at number 4 is Gearfried the Iron Knight, another one of Joey's most reliable offensive threats that he used to lay a beat down on his opponent. And a huge part of that was because of Gearfried's solid 1800 attack, which made it quite the beatstick even during Battle City, especially because it happened to be a level 4 monster, which meant that Joey was able to bring out this powerhouse on the field without needing to tribute. But instead of being a vanilla beatstick, Gearfried came with a couple of unique traits that separated it from Joey's other strong beaters. The most obvious quirk of Gearfried was its effect, which destroys any card that was equipped to it, an effect that was a deciding factor in Joey's Battle City duel against Weevil Underwood, where Gearfried's iron armor prevented Weevil's Parasite token from equipping to it. This kept Gearfried's type as warrior and allowed for him to attack through Weevil's insect barrier. But that's not the only interesting thing about this card, because in his duel against Rex Raptor during the Waking the Dragons arc, Joey showed off his love for the lore of the game and talked about a legendary swordsman who limited his own power by encasing himself in a suit of armor, before activating Release Restraint to free Gearfried the Swordsmaster, and equipped with a Red Eyes Black Dragon Sword to destroy Rex Tyrant Dragon with his effect and reduce the Dino's duelist life points down to 0. But Gearfried's most common use was as a beatstick, and one that almost allowed him to single-handedly beat Yami Merrick in the Battle City semifinals, where Joey managed to withstand the full force of the Winged Dragon of Ra. And after taking the attack of the Egyptian God card, Joey was still standing and Merrick's life points were wide open, which allowed for him to summon out Gearfried the Iron Knight, who had just enough attack to reduce Merrick's life points down to 0. But before he could declare an attack, Joey ended up fainting due to the amount of damage he'd sustained, which according to Battle City rules meant that Merrick was declared as the winner, with Joey only having been seconds away from victory. Thankfully, duels in the TCG aren't so taxing, but Gearfried is still a strong monster to have in your corner regardless. In the days of classic Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gearfried was a decent beatstick just like how it was in the anime, but was most well known for its equipped destruction effect, because instead of destroying Parasite tokens, Gearfried instead allowed you to loot Butterfly Dagger Elma, which when destroyed would return itself to your hand and allowed you to gain infinite spell counters on a Royal Magical Library to draw your entire deck, allowing to FTK your opponent with Exodia. Although even back then, this FTK was somewhat unreliable. But there were a few decks back then that realized Gearfried's potential with other equip cards, like Blast with Chain and Smoke Grenade of the Thief. In the modern era though, the original Gearfried no longer sees any real play, but that doesn't mean that Gearfried has fallen into obscurity, because there's a version of the card that still sees common play in Infernoble strategies, another deck that also just so happens to take advantage of Smoke Grenade when it was legal. But this version of Gearfried was never used for its synergy with Smoke Grenade, it was instead used for its great extension and powerful monster negate. Overall though, there's no doubt about Gearfried being an iconic part of Joey's arsenal, and one that would have altered the events of the entire series if Joey had been able to declare his attack. And that's something that's been realized in the TCG, as the modern version of Gearfried has enough power to rival that of another immortal phoenix. And cutting into number 3 is the Flame Swordsman, one of Joey's original ace monsters that he even declared as his favorite card during the event of the Duelist Kingdom arc, which resulted in his soul being placed into the card during Yamayugi's Shadow game against Bakura. Now in the TCG, Flame Swordsman is a vanilla fusion monster that requires 2 specific materials in order to summon, but in the anime, this card was actually a regular normal monster that featured a strong 1800 attack. This made Flame Swordsman an amazing card during the event of the Duelist Kingdom, where its high attack managed to cut down a ton of other monsters. And because of the Duelist Kingdom rules, Joey didn't even need to tribute a monster in order to bring out this level 5 beatstick to the field. This made it one of Joey's most reliable offensive threats, and one that was even made stronger when paired with an appropriate equip card, a strategy that was integral during Yugi and Joey's tag duel against the Paradox Brothers, where Flame Swordsman equipped with Salamandra managed to take down the Dungeon Worm due to his weakness to fire. But Flame Swordsman's most interesting use was probably as Joey's Deckmaster during the Virtual World arc, because as a Deckmaster he could transfer his strength to any of Joey's other warrior monsters, which was a representation of Joey's desire to protect and strengthen his friends. And this desire proved vital in his and Yugi's tag duel against the Big Five, where Flame Swordsman was not only necessary to summon out Dark Flare Knight, but its effect to strengthen other warriors gave Yugi's Dark Magician Knight just enough attack strength to take down the Big Five's Berserk Dragon. But as you can expect, Flame Swordsman has never really been too strong of a card in the actual game. And a big reason for that is because instead of a normal monster, Flame Swordsman is a fusion monster with 2 specific materials, a downside that made it nearly impossible to summon in the early days of the game. And you'd never really want to go out of your way to summon him since he's just a vanilla beatstick, and a pretty bad one at that with only 1800 attack, which is not only weaker than some modern normal monsters, but also weaker than some of the other earlier fusion monsters. But strangely enough, there are ways that Flame Swordsman and its retrains can be useful, and that way happens to strengthen other warriors while also working alongside equip cards, and that's by being a way to bridge into Isolde, a lane 2 monster that's capable of summoning any warrior from your deck, provided you send equip spells equal to the warrior monster's level from your deck to the graveyard. You can do this with the regular Flame Swordsman by using Instant Fusion or Ready Fusion, but the most common Flame Swordsman version available for Isolde is actually Ferocious Flame Swordsman, who saw playing Luromancer and Mikanko decks for its ability to convert 2 non-warrior monsters into a warrior. This meant that by summoning Luromancer Agent and linking off Fire and Geek Boy into Ferocious Flame Swordsman, you had an easy way of accessing Isolde, which in a weird way keeps the spirit of Flame Swordsman alive, because even if he isn't on the battlefield himself, he's still supporting the warriors to this day and lending strength to his comrades to combine into even stronger monsters, and that is definitely something Joey would be proud of. And watching over the number 2 spot is Time Wizard, one of Joey's most unique monsters that was gifted to him by Yugi on the boat to the Duelist Kingdom in order to strengthen his deck, and Yugi saying that it might be helpful in a tight situation. And that's because of Time Wizard's powerful effect. You see, in the TCG, Time Wizard's effect allows you to flip a coin, and if you call it wrong, you have to destroy all monsters you control and take damage equal to half of their combined attack stat. But if you call it right, you get to wipe your opponent's field of monsters. In the anime, this effect worked slightly differently and would spin roulette instead of flipping a coin. If the roulette landed on a skull, Time Wizard's time magic would end up opening a time warp and force your monsters to be scattered across time, removing them from the field. But if Time Wizard was successful, their time magic would age every monster in the field by thousands of years. This was a huge benefit for Joey in a ton of different ways, and one that managed to get him out of numerous tight spots throughout the series. Because in the face of overwhelming odds, Joey would gamble on Time Wizard's effect and usually succeed, aging up his monsters and causing a whole host of different downsides depending on the monster's age. The Harpy Ladies, for example, ended up becoming old and brittle, which caused their attack strength to lower, but Rex Raptor's Red Eyes Black Dragon ended up being turned into a complete fossil. But that's only half of the benefit of a successful Time Wizard, because it wasn't just your opponent's monsters that would age, it was Joey's monsters as well. And you'd think that would be a pretty bad downside, but it meant that Time Wizard paired perfectly with another one of Joey's ace monsters, Baby Dragon. Because if Time Wizard succeeded while Baby Dragon was on the field, Baby Dragon would turn into Thousand Dragon, a monster with attack strength to dominate over a field of aged monsters. Now unfortunately, for as cool as Time Wizard was in the anime, its TCG effect was never that useful. Destroying all monsters your opponent controls is a beneficial effect, but it relies on chance, and unless you had Joey Wheeler's luck, it was unlikely that you could actually guarantee that Time Wizard went in your favor, even if you had a second chance at it, especially since there are easier ways to clear the field without risking your own monsters. And as a whole, it's a shame that Time Wizard isn't amazing in the TCG because of how iconic it was in the anime, where it really felt like one of Joey's best backup plans that managed to get him out of even the most dire of circumstances. And it was a reminder to Joey from Yugi that the strength of some cards, while exceeding their attack points, can remain unseen with their synergy. And burning into number 1 is the Red Eyes Black Dragon, Joey Wheeler's ace monster that serves as proof that he's as strong of a duelist as both Kaiba and Yugi. Just like the other 2 main ace monsters of the series, Red Eyes is a vanilla beatstick with no effect, that according to its flavor text is a ferocious dragon with a deadly attack. But between the 3 aces, Red Eyes actually has the weakest attack at only 2400, and that makes a lot of sense. Because while Kaiba's Blue Eyes is supposed to represent pure power, Red Eyes instead is supposed to represent a great potential. And that idea mirrors Joey's arc in the anime, because initially Joey was terrible at the game when he played against his friends at school. But due to the intense training of Grandpa Moto, as well as some last minute trades to make his deck stronger, Joey was finally able to break his losing streak, and not only managed to beat My Valentine in his first duel of Duelist Kingdom, he also defeated Rex Raptor, who initially wielded the power of Red Eyes, managing to prove himself as a duelist while living up to his true potential. And from there on in, Red Eyes became a staple part of Joey's strategy and one of his strongest monsters all the way up until the Battle City, where he actually ended up losing Red Eyes to Rare Hunter only for Yugi to win it back. But instead of accepting Red Eyes from Yugi, Joey wanted to prove himself as a duelist once more throughout this arc, and so Red Eyes became part of Yugi's deck, and part of that was vital for Yugi's victory in his duel against Kaiba during the Battle City semifinals. This culminated in the final duel of Battle City after Merrick's defeat, where Yugi and Joey had one last duel where Joey could prove himself worthy to earn back his Red Eye's Black Dragon. We never got to see the results of this duel in the anime, but it's implied that Joey actually managed to beat the King of Games, as we once again see Red Eyes in his deck during the Waking the Dragons arc. And it's this desire to change and grow that made Joey so worthy to wield the card. Just like how Red Eyes wasn't just as powerful as a boss monster, but had hidden strength when it was combined with other cards or evolved into a greater threat. We saw a ton of Red Eyes evolutions across the series, from Red Eyes Black Dragon Sword to Red Eyes Black Metal Dragon. But the one that most people remember is probably Black Skull Dragon, the fusion between Yugi's Summoned Skull and Joey's Red Eyes, a representation of strength of the friendship between these two duelists. And weirdly enough, Red Eye's strength in the actual game mirrors why it's so strong in the anime. You see, in the TCG, Red Eyes itself is never a card you really want to play, because while it's a strong beat stick, it doesn't really do anything on its own, and most Red Eyes focused strategies are usually pretty messy. But across the years, different evolved forms of Red Eyes have seen a huge amount of competitive success, with all of these forms living up to the potential of Joey and Red Eyes in different ways. There's of course monsters like Dragoon that can be summoned out with the likes of Red Eyes Fusion, who have been splashed into a ton of different decks throughout the years. And there's also the likes of Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, which became a permanent staple in Dragon Link decks, and was so strong it even needed an errata to limit its effect to once per turn. Essentially, Red Eyes has never been an amazingly strong card on its own, as even in the early days of the game, it was outclassed by other strong beaters like Summoned Skull and Blue Eyes White Dragon. But despite being the weakest of the original aces, a few Red Eyes cards have actually made a big splash in the competitive metagame, which is honestly really cute, that the spirit of Red Eyes is alive to this day, showing that even the weakest cards can become some of the strongest threats, just like how even the worst duelists can become world champions. Alright, and that's the list. Like other protagonists, fitting only 10 cards in this list was almost impossible, so a part 2 could definitely happen. So if you'd like more videos like this one, let us know down in the comments below what you'd like to see. And remember to like the video and subscribe if you want to keep up to date on any future list. And thanks for watching.